else, hey, congratulations for your documentary, YouTube Effect.
Thank you. Much appreciated.
Much more of a congratulations. Congratulations for the fact that it's being showcased at this year's Tribeca Film Festival. How do you feel about that?
I feel great. I've been wanting to show a film here for a while, and the timing and everything worked out this year, which was great. It's been lovely. I'm also on the jury, so I've been watching a lot of documentaries, which has also been great because there was a really good ones here this year. So it's been a really exciting festival.
Most excellent. So for your YouTube Effect, what sparked you to do this documentary in the first place?
Well, I've been wanting to tell a story that kind of bridged some of the other tech docs I made, which had all looked at the growth of online communities, going back to the Napster story with my film Downloaded. And, my interest in online communities began in the 80s, pre-web, and Napster was sort of the big first watershed, in my opinion, online community. It was bringing a lot of people together online simultaneously for the first time in history. And that had a big impact. It had a big impact on me as well. But Google and YouTube are, by an order of magnitude, the largest tech companies on the planet. And they hadn't really ever been examined. And Gail Ann Hurd, the producer, had come to me and said she had some access points, and I had a lot of access points in this space, and asked if I wanted to collaborate on this. And it was a good time for me because I was looking to tell a story about the last few years and the big changes that had occurred, and how and where technology was in relationship to those changes. And they weren't all negative. Some of them were positive. It was really a desire to tell a nuanced story about the having had a little bit of time now in the technological revolution, still the early days, to sort of take a step back and look at, okay, here's where we're at the moment. Here's the good stuff that's going on. Here's the negative stuff's going on. And where do we go from here? And that was really my impetus.
So how did you want to initially approach something like this? Because there are so many ways and so many paths you could have taken this documentary.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a narrative storyteller by education and experience. So I approach all my docs kind of like I would a narrative film. I usually make movies and not series. I tend to prefer more compact stories that tell a kind of a firmly narrative, have a firmly narrative structure with a very core group of characters that aren't too broad. So I set out to create an ensemble, sort of a cast of characters that will drive the narrative and who will intersect with each other and who will have their own themes and stories that will help kind of convey, the things that we're interested in. And that really helps kind of put brackets around whatever you're doing. And sometimes in the case of YouTube, or say the doc I did last year on Frank Zappa, which also could have been a 20-part series, it gives you kind of parameters for what kind of story you're telling. And I had a very specific story in mind here. And I was not trying to tell the entire YouTube or the entire Google story or the entire story of technology and its ills. I was really interested in looking at the evolution of this particular technology and its impact by way of a core group of characters.
So tell us about obtaining some of your interview subjects, the choices you actually made, and were they easy to convince to be a part of this?
I mean, it's always a process, and it's always a matter of establishing trust. Having come from the acting world, that's something that I've been around a long time, and I've been on both sides of it a long time. And trust is something that I take very seriously. I'm not really a gotcha filmmaker. I don't like gotcha journalism, and I don't like gotcha movies, so I don't make those kinds of movies. So when I meet with subjects, they tend to know that I'm taking care of them on a certain level, the way I would a cast member in a film. Even if I don't agree with them, and even if they don't agree with me. It's not about making friends, really. It's about trust, which is a different thing. So, sometimes people say no, or sometimes someone may say yes, but you realize they don't have as deep a grip on the story as you would like, or they're not going to be very forthcoming, or they're not willing to really dig into the issues in a way that you need. And then I don't shoot them. So it's really a balancing act. Yeah. I mean, that's the whole game, basically.
So to you, is YouTube, more positive or a negative thing?
But that's the whole thing. It's both. It's not. I don't think that there's a kind of glass half full or half empty. I think when you're dealing with a technology that is this powerful, that encompasses this much of the planet. I mean, YouTube is an incomparable technology. It is not. It is not Vine or TikTok. It is not just a video, simply a video sharing platform. It is a search engine, a very powerful search engine. It is an archive for the planet. It literally stores, essentially, it's our Library Alexandria. I mean, this chronicles the entire Earth's history in video form, in a way that no other platform with that kind of reach does. It's really, it's almost hard to convey its significance on a cultural, even socio-political level. And that can't be all bad. It's impossible. There's just too much there. That's just, it comes down to saying, is humanity more good than bad? And people have opinions on that. Some people say, well, they're more bad than good. We should be erased. Let climate change happen. Let us be, singed off the face of the planet and let the planet continue on without us. That's just not the way I view things. I came up very early on in technology. I've always found great use for it. I was a very big proponent of online communities. I was a big proponent of Napster, even though I understood the ethical problems. It's a good case in point. It's a very nuanced issue. And I think that YouTube is doing an enormous amount of good. I think that YouTube was far ahead of giving voice to marginalized, diverse audiences and subjects around the world well before the entertainment industry decided to start taking diversity initiatives, probably well over a decade before. You had trans channels that had great reach. You had people in poor countries and countries with autocratic governments that had enormous reach and were able to convey injustices that were going on in their countries. You had people being able to create and get their entertainment out or their word out without being censored or without being gate kept. And the gatekeepers are very specific in their agendas, and so that has a political ramification as well. That's an enormous good, but it does also come with great ill consequence, and we dig into that in the film. And I think the Christchurch shooting was really kind of the tipping point. It was a negative, an inescapable negative consequence of huge magnitude that was directly related to YouTube that many of us saw coming. And I think Google does bear some responsibility, YouTube bears some responsibility for dealing with those ramifications.
Now, you yourself love technology. Where does this come from for yourself? I mean, especially, younger generations really love technology.
Yeah, I got on the internet when the internet was get-onable for people who weren't working at Sun Microsystems or within, whatever, a university system. And I found it extremely powerful. I found a lot of community there. There was a very interesting community in the early days of the internet. There were radical politics. There was really interesting artists. There were philosophy groups. There was, it was a very robust community in the pre-web days. And so that really drew me into the internet. I'm also, I'm a filmmaker that has done a lot of work around visual effects. So I've been involved with advanced technologies since I was very young, working in film and television, directing commercials and music videos and films and things like that. And even as an actor, I was around special effects very early on. And had an aptitude for it. I honestly I don't have any idea where it comes from. I wish I could tell you I did. But I've seen the great power of those things and the great benefits of those things from a very early period of the internet. And they maintain, and in fact, they've become more useful and more powerful in positive ways as time has gone on.
But it also reflects the fact of the negative uses of the internet as we go on too.
Yes, it does. And I felt that even within, it's an odd comparison, but even within the entertainment industry, I began to watch visual effects get maligned. Like, oh, it's just pixels, or it's just, button pushing. And meanwhile, I knew all these incredible artists that were moving into visual effects from practical effects in order to earn a living. And they were doing amazing work in that community. Now, does that mean that we don't have this kind of gray pixel effect quality to certain visual effects in movies that we see? That, yes, of course we do. There are terrible movies. And there are people who have profound artistry working behind the scenes that never get credit because people don't realize what they're doing. And you can take that and you can put that on the world stage, and suddenly, of course, the stakes are radically higher. The negative consequences of the reach of a company like Google and YouTube with the type of intentional propaganda, intentional malevolent acts that are highly funded by nefarious actors of whatever stripe, either political ideologies or whatever. Those have huge reach and huge power and huge consequences as a result. So the negative fallout is almost, on an equal level of magnitude just by the sheer nature of logic. I mean, if you're pumping enormous amounts of content through a platform, you're going to get an equal level of aggression and hostility, at least, as you're going to get people with good intentions.
Now, YouTube itself is so big, so gigantic today. Can it even be fixed? Because I watched this documentary and I don't even know if I can propose a solution.
I absolutely believe it can be fixed. I actually believe it will be fixed. I think that I put a lot of very, very intelligent experts into the film because I would not call myself, a tech expert. I'm a civilian with a lot of information and a lot of interest. One of the reasons I like making documentaries is it allows me to connect to people who know far more than I do on these subjects. People like Becca Lewis and Hani Farid and Talia Lavin and Brianna Wu and Natalie Wynn. I mean, there are people in this film who have been in the space on deep levels and have an enormous expertise. And we benefit from having them in the film, and people can go out and read their work. They can read Cory Doctorow. They can read all kinds of great people that are out in the space saying very reasoned and extremely expert things. As a punter, I will say, though, that I think it's our responsibility, meaning the non-experts, to be involved. I think it's citizens' responsibility not to assume that these experts are going to save us, not to assume that the platforms are going to save us, not to assume that our government is going to save us. I think it's down to the citizens to get involved, to get over their kind of knee-jerk, reactionary, all tech is bad mentality, if that's what they have. Or conversely, a kind of blinkered evangelical positivity that it's all great, which is equally unhelpful, frankly. And I think that's going to happen by hook or by crook. I think that the stakes are going to get so high, the ill consequences are going to reach into everybody's lives. And when this stuff comes home to roost for you, well, that's when you take action, and it's going to come home to roost. And to your point, no, I don't think there is an immediate solution. I don't think abolishing Section 230 is a solution. I don't think content moderation is particularly easy and simple. I don't think it shouldn't be done, but I don't think it's simple by any means. And so I think that there are very difficult questions ahead for these companies, for our governments, and for citizens. But I think it has to begin with the millions and millions and millions of people who are on these platforms, learning a little bit more about the platforms that are so important in their lives and taking action. And I think that about every walk of life. I think about women's rights. I think that about gun control. I think about climate. And I think that's kind of where we're at now, is I think people are waking up. We've had the cushy run, the average person for a little last, chunk of time. And I think everyone's kind of got to get off their backside and get involved at this point.
Well, everything's bound to collide, that's for sure.
That is for sure. Yeah, I think it is already doing that. Yes.
Now, for you, Alex, in the past few years, you've been directing a lot of movies, but the past few years, you've been directing a lot of documentaries. Mm-hmm. Could you tell us about this, this trajectory of your career, directing documentaries nowadays?
I love people. I love the subjects that I'm interested in. I'm very, very interested in. I like research. I think you can't make docs if you're not a research fanatic, and I am that. I like really deep diving into a subject and learning the sort of 360 view of it. And I like, having written a lot of movies and TV, I like that documentaries do not require you, and I love fiction. It's a different world and it has different rules. But I do like that documentary allows you to not have to fall so hard on one side or the other, to be kind of didactic on a topic. People talk a lot about anti-heroes in TV shows and movies. There really isn't such thing as an anti. I mean, we love Tony Soprano. We do, right? We root for him. So that's how the fiction rules work. And I like how in documentaries you don't have to do that. And human beings are more like that, right? They're more nuanced. They're not all good or bad. They're a combination of those things. And so documentaries, I think, give you the ability to convey the human experience in a much more truthful way and oftentimes a deeper way. And that's why I like making them so much.
And how do you not fall into that trap of being like a one-sided documentary? Because you've done an excellent job of presenting both sides into the film.
Oh, thanks. I think it's because fundamentally I'm not wired that way. I don't trust. I'm very skeptical of didacticism. I'm very skeptical of people who say something is X, because there's always a Y, and things are always a combination of X and Y. And I think you have to be somewhat at ease with, I don't know if chaos is the right word, but with untenable realities. I think you have to be somewhat at ease with the notion of flux, and also a lack of it's not arrogance, but of not thinking that you're right all the time, of the possibility that no matter how expert you are in something, there's a completely opposing view that you may want to be paying attention to. I think that's very important. And I think that one of the problems with disinformation is it presents itself as if it's the alternative view, right? It says, oh, well, mainstream media is bad. Come over here and listen to this. But they're just as didactic as the other side, right? They're just wedging you over to some other very sort of hyper specific and very unopen version of the truth. And so that's why I'm skeptical of the alt news as well. So to me, I'd rather watch kind of, get the 360 drill down into who I think is actually serious. Because my argument would be that I don't think it's actually that hard to seek the truth. There's a lot of information out there. The world is not flat. I hate to tell the flat earthers, but it really isn't. And you can kind of start there, right? There are basic truths. There's verifiable truths. There are a lot of people out there who are doing their vetting work, who are doing their sourcing work in a very ethical way. It doesn't take very long to get to reasoned arguments. They may be opposing, but they're going to be reasoned, and that's how I like to approach stories.
I love that approach. That is terrific. So what's next for you? More documentaries?
Yeah, I mean, I have a company that's set up for that, so we're knee deep on some next projects, which are exciting. Making a very interesting political doc about another country. I can't get into what it is right now, but I'm into that at the moment. And then I also have been, eager to do more acting since we made Bill and Ted 3, and that was intentional. I've been sort of back and studying for a long time. So I've acted in a few films. I just finished a film for Lexi Alexander for Netflix, and I'm going to do another film this summer and some more work in front of the camera, and I'm excited about that too.
Well, we love the fact that you're both in front and behind the camera, so that's
Thanks.
excellent. One last question before I let
Sure.
you go. I've taken a lot of your time already.
That's fine.
As viewers and audiences have a chance to watch the YouTube event, what is the one most important take that you hope they walk away with?
I don't know if there's a single take. It's a very expansive topic, but I hope that it encourages that people are encouraged to become active. I hope that it helps convey to people, because YouTube is, at the end of the day, for all of the power of Google and the power of YouTube and the monetization and all of these things, it is, at the end of the day, a largely citizen-run platform. And that the movie, I think, conveys that, and there's a lot of power in that. And I think, I don't know if it's a single takeaway, but that's a very important one. I hope people really understand that they are far more empowered than they realize, but only if they utilize that power.
Well said. Well said. Well, Alex, it's a pleasure meeting you. Thank you for carrying this conversation about YouTube effect, and I really do hope a lot of people will check that out. I mean, for a living, I have to rely upon.
We all do. Let's be honest. At this point, we all do. Yeah.
Hopefully, we get to do this again next time. Appreciate it.
Great. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay. Bye bye.